First thing I want to explain is I am very, very lucky. What I have is I have one supplier that I have trained very, very well. He puts the waste vegetable oil back in the containers that it originally comes in, the original plastic containers. And he never gives me very much water at all. He cleans the equipment out last. He dumps the oil when it's cold, and I end up with a very small amount of water and debris in the bottom of each container. So in that respect, I'm very, very lucky. Second thing is I age my oil. I like my oil to sit in these containers covered up for 6 months. The reason being is, I don't know if you can see it, but if you look at the bottom of each of these containers, you'll see a white milky substance. That's the water and French fries and all kinds of garbage that's in the bottom of these containers. Each container has a date on the top. 12/25/10, that one was done. And I rotate them. They don't stay. The reason why you see them closed is there's two problems with these containers. Number one, if the sun gets to them, the plastic becomes brittle and starts to break up. The second problem is birds. Birds will peck a little tiny hole right in there or right in there, and you'll have a giant mess. I don't know what they think they're doing, but they peck holes in the containers. So we start with relatively clean oil, relatively water-free, and we age it so that we get good oil at the top and junk at the bottom. Now this is my filter. This is a contraption. It's actually very, very simple. What we have over here is a Becket Oil Burner. This is the type of oil burner pump that you would see on the East Coast primarily to heat people's homes. And it's just a gun, has a motor, it has a fuel pump over here, and it would have a nozzle port coming out the back with a 100 psi connection going into a nozzle which would shoot fuel into the furnace. But what we've done here is we've plugged off that connection, and we're basically using this oil burner pump as just an oil pump. This is the original filtration system that would normally be on the oil burner. The pump has been converted to a two-pipe system, which means oil goes in and oil comes out. It's constantly circulating oil from the home's tank to the oil burner and back to the home's tank if it was in its normal position. So that's converted so that the oil will go through it and go back out. Well, what I've done is I've added a regular diesel filter to the output of the pump. The pump then filters the oil once going into the pump, and because there's no nozzle, all of the oil goes out the output and through this secondary white filter, which is an oil filter, a diesel filter. I purchased at Napa, and it does a very good job. And that diesel filter now is 3 years old. I've only had to replace the first filter, not the second. The second goes on and on and on because the first filter does such a good job. What I do, this is clean oil. This is my output tube. Okay? It goes up, then comes back down, and that's my output tube. I stick that right in my container like that. Now when it comes to the oil going in, take my oil, this one's ready. I'm trying to hold the camera and show you guys at the same time. It's not real easy. And I put my pipe in the plastic, and I have a little piece of tape right there. This tells me that I am only halfway down in my container. I'll never pick up the garbage at the bottom. I'm only halfway. Got a timer on it that I basically turn for 10 minutes. And it starts to suck oil out of that container. And deposits it in this container. This oil is now clean. It's just as clean as diesel fuel. It works incredibly well. The reason why I added the timer was simply because when you're doing this, it gets boring standing around. And if you run out of oil and you allow that pump to run dry, you can damage the pump. So I set it for 10 minutes. I come back in a half hour. It's used up a third of the bottle of oil. It's taken it out. I've never run my pump dry. And that's why there's a timer on it. The reason, and when you get down to here, you'll no longer suck oil. You take this container, and you do 2 of them. Then you take 1 of them and pour it into the other one. As you're pouring, when you get down to the end of the container that you're pouring out of, you'll start to get water and you'll start to get garbage. You stop pouring. Then take the container that you've poured into and let that sit for a couple weeks and allow that to drain down. That's what these 3 containers over here are doing. The container to the right is just an empty container. The container in the center is a container that's sitting, and the container to the left is pure garbage. Now I say pure garbage, but I keep it around because once you filled up that container with garbage and allowed it to sit for another month, about a third of that container will turn back into good usable oil. 2/3 of it will be garbage, and the third of it on the top will be good. Then I can use my machine here, and notice I use rigid tubing. The reason why I use rigid tubing is I can bend it, and I can set it in the container so that I can just suck off what I want without having to stand there and babysit it. So this is how we filter the vegetable oil, and we get a good amount of it out of it, and it works quite nicely. So I wanted to show you guys how this worked. It's pretty much trouble-free. That's a Becket burner. You can use just about any burner you want. I chose Becket because Becket allows me to have this little foot that you can add to the burner, clamp to it, and it makes it more stable. So I chose Becket. Now if you want to see what a Becket furnace looks like unmolested, I'll show you. This here is a Becket that hasn't really been touched a lot. You can see that this is where your cone is, where your nozzle sits. You got your pump, nozzle port, that gets plugged off. You got your input, and the bottom is an output. You put a bottom in here, and if you buy one of these that has only been a 1-pipe system, you'll have to put a plug inside the pump to convert it from a 1-pipe to a 2-pipe. If it's a 1-pipe, you won't be able to flow it through and out to the other end. Down in here there's a blower. I removed that because I didn't want it to be spinning. Transformer sits up here, produces high voltage. Transformer makes a great spark plug testing tool. I've got it in the shop. I should have brought it out and showed you guys it. But you hook it up to 120 volts and you put a spark plug across it and check a spark plug every time. It's a primary control. It's a 45-second delay that you don't need. It works with a fire eye, basically tells the control whether or not you have flame, and if you don't have flame, shuts it off. But you'll just discard this, and you'll put your switch, or you'll put your timer right in this spot. So this is how it starts. That's how it starts, pretty much. And you can buy these on eBay pretty cheap, especially off-season. Oh, and one more thing, the pumps. This is a Sundstrand pump. This is a 1-stage. The other one's a 2-stage. 2-stage will do better. Okay? Good luck.